to our popular SheLeadsTech podcast series. I'm Shirley.
And I'm Jade. And we're both members of the ISACA Vancouver chapter SheLeadsTech team.
This season of our podcast is called Breaking Barriers. It is difficult for women to break barriers in tech leadership. Doing that at work and in your industry association takes an amazing person.
We have a great lineup this year, and we're excited to introduce to a new guest every month.
In case you don't know about us yet, here is a little bit about ISACA SheLeadsTech first. The SheLeadsTech global program aims to increase the representation of women across the digital trust workforce and elevate more female leaders in technology.
Why? Because there's a gender imbalance, and recent studies have shown that imbalance is even worse in the technology field.
The gender balance has real benefits for organizations.
SheLeadsTech is really community-oriented. We engage women and men to help develop, empower, and advance women in technology-related careers through engaging events.
If you are looking to grow your network, build new skills, or just meet some inspiring people in tech, SheLeadsTech is a perfect place to start. We host panel discussions, networking events, and so much more.
And our podcast series is the perfect way to start. In each episode, our featured guests talk about their experiences.
They also share their tips to empower women in the field and grow our next generation of female leaders.
We drop a new episode every month, so stay tuned, everyone. And thank you for joining us along this journey.
Good day, everyone. My name is Thais Ramos. This is the podcast for SheLeadsTech, ISACA Vancouver chapter. We're here today with Sandeep Sidhu. She is Emily Carr University's Chief Information Officer. She is also an Educause board member. She has been a visiting professor at the Beedie School of Business at Fraser University, the chair of Client Services Special Interest Group at the Canadian Council of Chief Information Officers, also known as CUCCIO, among many other renowned institutions. But above all, she's a very strong female leader with an Asian heritage coming all the way from Australia, but Canadian-based. And she's going to speak to us about her journey towards becoming a CIO. So Sandeep, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. Can you share a little bit about your journey to becoming a CIO? What were some of the key experiences that shaped your career?
Great question, and welcome to my campus as well. I just wanted to say thank you for organizing this on our beautiful Emily Carr campus. My journey has been somewhat organic and somewhat planned. So I would say both things came together. I went to school and did my usual degree, did my bachelor's in technology, and I ended up finding a job. My first job was actually in information security, which really taught me lots of things, gave me some really good experience. I ended up doing a few contracts after that. Meanwhile, I felt I was always academically very curious. I wanted to learn new skills. I wanted to invest in myself, and that continues to date. Ended up going back to school, did 2 masters. The second master's was by research. And one of the reasons I felt I needed to do that was to be able to not just have one-way learning experience. I wanted to be able to do a little bit of analysis, learn from different perspectives, and to be able to create my own work. So academically, I did that, ended up in a consulting role. So most of my work prior to moving to Canada was in private sector. I did consulting with a few organizations, which was absolutely fantastic. I do recommend, if someone is considering a career in leadership, is to do a little bit of work in different industries. That taught me a lot, from mining to education to government. Policy work, strategic planning was very different. Technology was very different. And earlier we were chatting about how I got to Canada. My husband's Canadian, and I decided to make that move. Very happy with that move as well. Meanwhile, the space, so moving from Sydney to Vancouver, it was very different. I worked with some consulting groups or organizations that didn't really exist in Vancouver. They were in Toronto on the East Coast, which again, now this is where organic comes into play, which worked out well because I ended up applying for a job at Capilano University, my first higher ed education experience, and I loved it. It took about a year to love it, I'll be honest. And I ended up working and collaborating with lots of folks that I had never experienced in any other industry, how they support each other. So that was my first, what I would call a real leadership role. I'd been team lead before, but not in an organization at that level. From there, ended up at Simon Fraser. And then this is where now the very typical moving from manager to a director and now being a CIO worked out really well. But along the way, I think I knew that I wanted to be in a leadership role, but I was always open to opportunities, not a typical way to progress, but opportunities in terms of I teach. I've taken a break for the last couple of years because this is my first CIO role, and I felt that was a lot overcommitment for me to do. But so I've tried to keep both of them active professionally, while I also teach, which I absolutely love teaching and being in a classroom. And I was telling someone yesterday, the most enjoyable experience teaching is running workshops, because you get that interactivity, you work with people, and you'll see probably a theme of that interaction throughout my conversation today.
That's amazing, and that's such a rich journey. But can you tell us if at any point in that long and diverse journey, did you ever face any challenges for being a woman, for being an immigrant, for being ethnically diverse? Can you tell us about that?
That is an excellent question. I think we all through our different journeys face different challenges as well. So I did as well. A couple of things. In fact, sometimes I actually use that towards my benefit. Now I'm going to give you an example. One of the organizations I worked with, and I've told many people this, I was the only woman on that part of the floor, which meant the entire washroom was mine. So it worked out to my benefit. It was a space that I felt very comfortable with, where I had to break somewhat, we will say, barriers as well. Often they're pre-established networks when you go into those organizations. So one of those challenges was, how do you break into that network and be recognized beyond your gender for the work that you do? And I think we've made a lot of progress. In fact, I would give credit to our previous generation. I didn't have to work that hard because the previous generation, at least the last one before us, did all of that work. So my mom's a stay-at-home person. She's always wanted to be that way, but I think she also paved the way for me by doing that, because she gave me all the time and attention. She let me grow in so many other ways. To be able to do 3 degrees and not have family and friends around you support you. So I think there's that. Breaking the barriers comes with a support system. And I feel I definitely was privileged to have that support system around me. I think the second one was, you probably noticed that in my office as well, there is a feminine touch that often in tech was considered as something low grade. And how do you break that? You just keep going at it. It's okay to go into a meeting wearing a dress. It's okay to wear makeup. It's okay to overdress, to have jewelry. There was a point, I work in art and design university now. You will see a lot of folks in very senior roles have tattoos. At one point, that was a taboo. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also another barrier that we're breaking in so many ways for us to be ourselves. But I will be very honest, I didn't feel that way when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. It takes time. It takes people around you to support you to get there. And I can say that now that I've tried it. But in my 20s, I was very, I wouldn't call myself shy ever, but I needed a little bit more confidence to be able to do that. I hope I somewhat answered your question and went down a path.
Yeah, absolutely. And this series of the podcast that we're doing this year is called Breaking Barriers. So you absolutely showed us some of the ways we can break those barriers. They're invisible to the eye, but they're very much there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also you mentioned about how the previous generations opened a bunch of doors for us.
Mm-hmm.
So were there any mentors or role models who influenced your path? You mentioned your mom, but professionally or in your life, did you have anyone who you looked up to and said, this is a path that I want to follow. This is someone that I look up to, that I think, this is something that speaks to me.
Oh my God, without them, I wouldn't be here. And there's so many. I'm just going to probably share 3 right now. And on my network, you will see there is a lot more than 3, but 3 that I can think of. One, the previous CIO at Emily Carr, Sally Falkai, absolutely my role model. One of the reasons I'm in this role, I was telling my network that I'm an aspiring CIO. When the right opportunity arrives, I'll be considering it. And she was one of those first ones when she was leaving from here. She's like, I think this would be good for you to look at. And she recommended me for the job. I had to work hard, earn the job. She didn't give me the job. But it was very important to be seen. And it was actually a tough competition. I had to run for the competition, go through it. We all do. We all deserve having an opportunity to be able to show that skill. So she was definitely foundational. That's one. Second, and I've had role models and mentors in my life from different genders, different backgrounds as well. Second was an individual when I was at SFU. I happened to be going through, the university was going through a very sensitive incident, cyber incident. That never happens, right?
No, never.
And I was acting CIO at the time and very nervous. What am I going to do? Still finding my place. And our chief safety officer, Mark, was there, Mark Lalonde. And so him and I were talking how to, respond to this incident. What does it look like? And he could sense that I was nervous. And so he said, Sandeep, I want you to just take a break, go for a walk, make sure you drink some water. You got this. And I've got your back. We've got your back. And for someone to say that when they see someone is working hard, willing to take a risk, and they can fall on someone, and to have that guidance. So that was incredible to see. The third person I'm going to say is someone I really, really admire. Her name is Ghislaine Gray. She is the CIO AVP at McMaster University. And I had met her through the CUCCIO network that you were talking about. And we bumped into each other in the airport, and she's like, I see something in you that I would love to be part of your journey. How do I do that? And she's been my mentor, my coach, someone I text back and forth with. When I got this job, I got a big box of donuts, which didn't need that many donuts, but it was so thoughtful. She found my favorite bakery, sent me some flowers and donuts. And throughout this journey, when I'm in doubt, it's these 3 people are representatives of a massive network that exists in higher ed, where I could pick up the phone, I could send a message, and I could lean on them. And without them, I am a product of this network, 100%. Anyway, that's just a snapshot of that network that I can lean on.
That's amazing. And it takes being proactive, right? So
Yes.
You got to put yourself out there, is what I'm hearing.
You have to make time for it, 100%.
And people are more open than we think they are.
I actually agree with you. And often I've gone up to people and say, hey, could I have some time with you? I've only had one no. I've had a no, but just one out of like hundreds.
And it's okay. It's a no. Move
because people are busy. I've also said no, because you have to make sure that you can do justice to spend authentic time with someone. It's just not a checklist. You need to know the person. You need to build that connection. So I'm with you on that.
Exactly. The no's are, sometimes they're mindful. They're good no's.
Agreed.
So take your no's mindfully as well, I guess.
Yeah. And keep going at it.
Yeah. Keep trying.
Yeah.
You'll find your yeses, and they're meant to be.
Can I add one more thing? Is if someone has given you time, remember you have to pay it forward.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? That's the power of network. So if one person has mentored me, I try to at least find 3 more in a good way so I can contribute and do that. And I encourage everyone to carve that time out. And I actually look at my calendar, how much time I'm spending mentoring others. It is in my calendar as a commitment that I make.
Absolutely. That's so important. And we were talking about this before we started, but this is a SheLeadsTech, and we're focused a lot on promoting women. But we need to help men rise with us.
Agreed.
So if you're a mentor, if you're paying it forward, if you're trying to make this grow, think about having men under your portfolios as well, under your guidance as well, so that they can become leaders that will foster gender equality as well.
I agree.
Because the whole network needs to grow together.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, in our Canadian CIOs group, one of the CIOs, Ma Tang, he's a CIO at University of Ottawa, and he started this movement around allyship. And he makes true commitment. I look up to him. And there's so many examples like that. Often, we read these things in the books, but we have people working with us doing that work. And that's so inspirational. And the goal is, if we see a gender gap for women, let's not create it for men.
Yes.
We can all coexist, and we must coexist with a sense of respect.
And we create better work when we coexist.
100%.
Yeah. So, seeing now that you've achieved that, you are now a CIO, and now that you got here, what do you think are some of the essential skills you need to develop in order to be a good CIO, in order to get there?
So I'll give my opinion. This might not be for everyone. The 3 things that come to mind. Number 1, communication. You want to be able to communicate in different ways with different people. So you're talking about communicating with the board, communicating with the presidents or the executive team. Very different to when you have to communicate with your data architect or your security officer. So think about what that communication looks like. So building those skills. Second is relationship building. A lot of work that we do is based on trust, and you have to build the trust. And Stephen Covey is one of my favorite leadership coaches, and I read his books all the time. And one of the things, I think it came from him, I might be mixing another author, is the idea of trust being a bank balance. So once you build that bank balance of trust with someone, it's okay to sometimes draw it out. But if you don't build it up, you have nothing to draw out. So relationships, personally speaking, are built on that, built on trust. And the third one, I would say collaboration. Win-win, again, Stephen Covey concept. Win-win doesn't come without collaboration. I cannot succeed alone. So look for partnerships, look for authentic places where you can work with others, and you have to also, along with your success, find success for someone else. And I think that is so healthy for an institution, especially in institutions where we have massive silos. And I think our jobs, no matter what roles we are in, is to build bridges. And silos do exist for good reasons, but there's no reason why we can't build a bridge across a silo. So those 3 have been the center of I think my belief as well, and also the skills that I believe have got me to this place.
Absolutely. And how would you describe, having said that, how would you describe your leadership style?
Fast-paced. I'll start with that.
I kind of can see that, yeah.
Very fast-paced. Yet I have learned to manage that. Manage that, to be mindful of people around me. Second, I would say I believe in investing in people. People come first, and I think there's so many spaces and frameworks that talk about people, process, and technology, and people have always been the center of this. Technology will come and go. When you build people rightfully, invest in them, some people don't want to grow, and that's okay as well. But investing in people for them to feel comfortable, to enjoy their work while setting expectations is so important. So I think those are the two elements that I would definitely highlight in my role.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there are some unique strengths that female professionals bring to the table that are like a special sauce that they can maybe hone in a little bit more, that there's that differential that they can bring in?
I think nurturing comes naturally to one side of the gender versus other. Predominantly. I wouldn't say it does not exist on the other side, but I think predominantly it does. And I was listening to one of the TEDx speakers, and this morning I was trying hard to remember her name, and I couldn't recall, but if you look at Renee, she talks about vulnerability. I don't think back in the 60s, when you look at workplaces that were predominantly male dominated, or still are, even talk about that work of being vulnerable with someone else. And I think there is a little bit of that coming from female leaders building workplaces where they're creating these spaces of nurturing others. That does not mean we don't get work done. We have to get work done. And I think that's another misconception, that for some reason females are seen soft, loosey-goosey. That's not true.
Too emotional.
Too emotional. Everyone has emotions, and in fact, I would argue in some workplaces the emotions are suppressed, and that's not healthy for anyone. So I think there's that space of emotional intelligence. I think that's now it's helping organizations become better. And largely, I think when you look at a wider perspective from a community aspect, women tend to give a lot more to the community and volunteer as well. So I think they're also bringing that into the space. I see that a lot if you look at some of the roles that they do, why they've been successful in nonprofit organizations. They've been successful in medical careers as well. And I think we've missed that perspective over the years. That's how I see the world, and how I see them contributing. And my last thought would be, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why hold back?
Why hold back? Absolutely. And also give men the permission to be vulnerable and to be emotional.
Exactly.
And to bring their feminine in.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's okay.
I agree.
Bring it on. We can take it.
Yeah.
But the gender imbalance is there. There is the gap. And I think it's up to us leaders to do something to help balance that. So how do you think you in your role, and what initiatives or programs or, anything that you have done or put in place to help support and empower women, especially in the tech industry that's still very male dominated for different reasons. But how in your organization, how do you try to bridge that gap and empower them more and support them more into filling those spaces and balancing up a little bit of that gap?
I must say I don't have a massive program that I can take credit for that I've led or a massive initiative. For me, it has happened more in small ways. I'll give you a few examples. Most of the time when I try to present at a conference or I host a panel, I try to find people who need to have space to showcase them. So I find some women who are looking to grow, to present, and I go and I invite them to be part of a panel. That's one. Second, I told you the story about someone coming up to me and saying, hey, I think if you're interested, I would love to work with you, mentor you. So I've done that too. When I find someone that I feel who's interested, I've gone up to them and I've had that chat and I give them the time and attention. I've also recommended people for certain roles where they think they would excel or they might be interested in, and also help them get to that place. So sometimes there is, I think we've all heard the stats around women looking at a job and saying, oh, I don't have the 20%, so I'm not going to get it. So often they won't apply for that job. So when I have those conversations, I would say, well, okay, you don't have the 20, but how can you get there? How can I help you to get there? Recommending them certain training programs, connecting them with mentors. So sometimes I won't be that right mentor for someone because of what they're looking for. I don't have it, either a skill or the experience. Connect them with someone. And lastly, something I would say a very subtle social thing. I'm a social person. I learn when I hang out with people. I grow. And I think I also contribute that way. So that's my style. And so about 1.5 or 2 years ago, very casually, we started, and you're part of that group as well, a group where we bring anyone who is looking to connect and share their experiences with another woman. We go to Italian Kitchen. Sarah, one of our friends, works there, and we organize a very casual meet others, a conversation night where it's about connecting with others and getting inspired. There are days when we go home, we are exhausted, and that task list is never ending and the emails keep piling, and we need a place to kind of unlock that tension, the steam. And I feel that space that we've created, and I didn't. A bunch of us got together and we said, let's just hang out at least twice a year. So we try to do that around holiday season when we all almost close to burnout and we can use a little bit of a time to do a check-in. And I think that's worked out well. I think we're about 24 people last time I checked in that group.
Sandeep is being very modest. And honestly, she has gathered a bunch of brilliant women together from a whole array of industries and perspectives and ages and backgrounds and whatever you can imagine, and put them together to connect, to build, to pay it forward, to network, to create that. And it's mostly women helping women, connecting to women, and growing that network. And that was basically her getting her friends together, that were getting their friends together, bringing their friends, and that's how we're here today.
And they all said yes. When I reached out to them, they all said yes. And they are very accomplished women. You're right. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal. And when you meet with them, you get the sense of inspiration.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So no space for being humble here. It was all you.
Humility actually does not come naturally to me. That's one of my talents.
I love that.
I've been told I have to work really hard on that.
But within your team, let's talk about your team now. How do you spot and foster if you see a young woman that's full of potential and you see that light in the eye, that you can see that maybe she's going through some challenges or doubting herself or thinking that she doesn't have space? What are some things that you take upon yourself to say, I'm going to do this. I see this in you and I'm going to help you do this within your team? Like, how do you work around those biases that are innate to us, that are sometimes very internal to each one of us, or sometimes they are external too. When you see that they're happening around you, how do you address those things?
I'll give two examples. One, just at Emily Carr, I had an individual upcoming, needed that. And I also had one of my directors who actually came from UBC, who is a great mentor. And when he wanted to mentor her and she wanted to learn. So it was really connecting. So my job is to connect sometimes those individuals. And now she's taken on a sysadmin role, moved from service desk into his team, and she is blossoming. And all she needed was that little tap on the shoulder and say, you know what, you want to learn? He's a fair way, he's an opportunity. Put her through some training. She ended up getting the job, and she's got a mentor as her supervisor who is a male, talking about different genders. He is one of the most inspiring leaders in my leadership team. And I cannot say enough about what Laszlo is doing to mentor Nazrin. And these are the two people in my team here. The other example I would take is an individual that I met. I'm going to keep the name confidential, through a network, and I'm mentoring that individual for some time. And that person was having a tough time at work. And all they needed was someone to listen, someone an outside perspective. Sometimes you don't need to solve the problems for them. Sometimes you just need to be able to vent, and be there. And when they get through that process, then they go, okay, I need this advice. And then be ready to provide that support, some validation, and sometimes also show them the mirror and say, okay, you're telling yourself a story that may not be true. There may not be some barriers in the way. Have you thought about da 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 da? And help them also build the confidence to be able to see through that. And I think, again, I'm not giving too much detail here, but you have to build their confidence up, not always by saying, yes, you're right. Sometimes you have to challenge their stories.
Some tough love is important sometimes.
Yeah, and we all tell ourselves some stories.
Yes.
I try not to tell myself a story that for certain reason I can't do something. I do have moments where I do it, but I have to pause and unpack that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, we all need the mirrors and the tough love, because it's not all.
And right now, who's doing that for me?
Who is?
Our president. We have a new president who used to be a provost, and she has created a very safe space where she can call me out when I've made a mistake. I do make mistakes. I like to think I'm perfect.
Wow, no. You don't tell me that.
And
are you human too?
No. But it's about, again, creating that space and having someone who believes and trusts in you to be able to say, hey, this is not working out. I want you to change this. I can give you strategies if you like, or if you want to take the time, you figure it out, but this is not working out. And I think we need that to be able to grow in a different way. To be surrounded by yes and not get feedback is actually the worst thing that we can do to ourselves and do it to others. So for me, I'm also modeling what I am seeing around me from people that I follow. And she's certainly one of those. I also have an amazing peer group that I work with, women. We have a very diverse leadership team. We have our VP students. She is Nisga'a First Nations, and what I'm learning from her is absolutely phenomenal. And I would say the same for our provost, our interim provost, and being surrounded by the right people. Actually, I should have said this earlier. You have to surround yourself with people that believe in you, yet challenge you in a safe manner so you can grow. So important.
And leadership does set the tone.
Agreed.
It does set the tone, for better or for worse. It does set the tone. And I think
Agreed.
you just answered what would be my next question around how do you think organizations can create more inclusive environment for women in tech, and not for only for women, but for all
Everyone.
groups, everyone. And I think it's by doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Bringing leadership that are representative of those groups.
Yeah.
So you have indigenous, you have women, you have men, you have all colors and backgrounds, and you know, everything under the sun that your students, because it's a higher ed organization, can see themselves in their leaders.
I agree with you.
But it doesn't stop there. It's the actions.
Yes.
It's the behaviors, because only being born under the sun in a certain place in a certain way doesn't give you immediate validation. It's how you act, how you behave. And that modeling that you just spoke about is so important.
I agree. I totally agree. And for the young generation to see that, working in higher ed is so important for us to do that every single day. And I'm learning. As I make mistakes, I'm learning that myself.
And I think the big shift is we are being treated as human beings. We are being treated as human beings who make mistakes but are allowed to fix them.
Yes.
Who build trust to say, this is not working. Do you want to figure it out for yourself? But, you know, it's not all yeses and rainbows. It's not all, you know, you messed up. No. No, this is doomed forever.
Yeah.
No, you can be vulnerable. You can also work on your stuff. You are also held accountable for things.
100%.
So all these nuances and all the colors in the prism need to be there.
I love that analogy, the colors in the prism. And I think diversity comes in so many ways. It's not, you were just saying that earlier, and I truly believe in that. And higher ed is the best place to see that and to nurture it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we also set the tone for, I guess, everybody else, because we are educating in higher ed the future leaders in corporations and NGOs.
Great.
In big pharma, and you know, all the industries out there, they're all coming out of universities. So we, like it or not, higher ed is setting the tone for a bunch of what's going to happen in the future.
I agree.
Right?
I totally agree.
And then again, we talk about like diversity and women, and I think a big piece of the gap with women has a lot to do with work-life balance, with motherhood, with house obligations, and the fact that we have so many responsibilities and so many duties. You know, we have our work at work, we have our work at home, we have our kids, we have to, you know, work out, we have to be fit, we have to have a social life, we have to meditate, do yoga. We have to do it all. You know, we're like, and we see so many have tos and so many things, and finding that balance is so hard. And as a leader, also, it's a big part of our jobs, making sure that work-life balance is achieved even more with women, because that's where the biggest gap is, more than for men, because I think men kind of come from a background where they have an easier time making those decisions.
I think they've been programmed.
They've been programmed to,
They've been programmed, and
as have we.
And
how do we
balance, it's a disadvantage
calibrate
for them, right? It's a disadvantage for them as well, because we are expecting them to reprogram themselves.
How do we calibrate that?
Right? How do we? It's a fantastic question. I have part of the answer. I don't the whole answer. If I did, I'd probably be writing a book or
getting a Nobel Prize,
or coming up with a patent for something. But he's what I.
Is there an app for that?
There could be an app. He's what I've found that's worked for me is I often used to feel guilty for not doing it all. So I've had to pick my battles. There are days where I'm not gonna make a meal. It's okay. You can actually find healthy meals reasonably priced somewhere, and that's okay. It's totally okay. And having a partner who understands that as well. Both me and my husband live a very active life, very busy life. So work-life balance is a bit of a issue for both of us. What I've had to learn is if I am working and showing up to work that way, what does that mean for others around me to see it? So I'm making that choice to perhaps extend my hours or work late or whatever. But there are time and places for others to also do or not do that. And make sure you are very clear with your team that if I am doing that, that's my choice. And they need to find their work-life balance. As you said, some have kids, some have other commitments, some have aging parents.
Yes.
Right? Some have partners with some ailments. So they need to carve that time out. But for me, it's been the biggest learning experience is to make sure I don't impose mine on others. I don't have a good work-life balance. I have to actively work on it. And I try to do it in a few ways. Making sure this year, I think I've been actually pretty good, making sure I take a few vacations, and often I would not burn out my vacation, and being very intentional about the time. And it's okay to say no to certain things at work when you can, when you have to have time for your family. So it's still work in progress, if I may say. Today I'm not projecting that I've perfected everything, but that space is still work in progress.
And with your team, mostly with the women in your team that have those ancillary obligations as well.
Yeah, and reminding them that it's okay. I actually have someone in my team who has 2 young daughters. Our security officer, Ed, he's going to hate me calling him out on this, but I will. And an amazing wife, and he overworks. And often, like this week, he was forced to take vacation. And that's our job. Sometimes you say, leave it alone. We've got your back.
Actually, this is a good way to support women too. It's making sure that...
And we are supporting women. He's got 2 young girls.
Yeah. Making sure that dad's home at some point.
Yeah.
Making sure that the parent is
and what do they
taking
see
time
in their dad? What they want from their dad is so important for them to grow as professionals in the future. And I would expect the same for me from someone else, and I would do the same for my leadership team. And there are moments where I remember when I was in my 20s, we all were eager and want to learn and overwork, and that's okay. That's totally okay. But there's someone watching out for you and saying, take a break. And that's good enough. That little thing is good enough.
And I think the world now is a lot more, especially after COVID, of all the things that COVID brought us that were bad, some were good. And I think the flexibility and the understanding that, you know, life has a lot of variables and we need to work around them. So if you need to pick up a kid, if you need to take a break for your mental health, if you need to see the sun, if only for 10 minutes, you do that because that's important too. And we kind of learned that the hard way through, you know, the hardest way possible. But I guess that was a byproduct of COVID. It was like finding ways to not go crazy and finding ways to have those moments in your life where you make time for your family and giving your teams that flexibility to have a to pay attention to their families, to their lives, their mental health, even to get some vitamin D, because that's all part of having a good work-life balance.
Yeah. And burnout is real.
Burnout is real.
For anybody and everybody, and it's real for people who overcommit. I'm one of them.
Absolutely. Well, we're reaching the end of our time together. So as a closing thought, I know we could be doing this for another at least 2 hours.
I don't think listeners want that. We'll wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up and then we'll keep talking. But if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think I may have hinted on that earlier. I wish I had started investing in building a strong network of mentors and coaches when I was in university. I only started realizing the importance of that when I started. I think my first step was when I was in my late 20s, when I was working for, I think, Hewlett Packard. That's when I realized the importance of a network and a mentorship around me. And if I could have that when I was in my first year of university, I think I would have, I don't think I would have become the prime minister or president of a country or anything. I think I would have had less bruises on my back, and I would have felt a lot more confident, doubted myself a little less, would have doubted, because that's part of your journey as well. And I would have felt a little bit more comfortable being the authentic self that I feel I can now live in my 40s. Yeah, that would be my one thing. Find a mentor. And mentors actually around you.
That's amazing advice. And I want to pick one thing that I read on your LinkedIn bio, that you said you want to leave this world a little better than when you came in. So I want to ask you, what legacy do you hope to leave as a leader, not only in your organization or on the industry, but maybe in the world for the next generation?
I actually thought about that a little bit, because I often get asked this question, what does that mean when you call that out as a mantra? For me, if people could say that I played a teeny tiny role in helping them get to where they needed to get to, whatever that is, I would be happy. I'm not keeping a count. I'm not saying 100 or 200, but people around me that I can help in a positive way to even build their confidence, that's a better world for me.
That's the real body count.
That's the real body count.
Number of bodies that you helped improve in any way in their lives.
And sometimes you don't know if you really helped them, right? So it's my view. Sometimes
they need to tell you.
People move on, right? And you never talk to them. So many people have mentored me, and I don't think I ever went back and told them how good it was for them to do something that little for me. But yeah, I just hope that I'm doing that and living that every day.
That's amazing. And that's also something to be said about gratefulness. Make sure that you let people know how grateful you are for the help that you've gotten, and pay it forward, like Sandeep said. It's so important.
And Canadians are very good at
I think so too.
Sharing gratitude. But if anyone who's listening right now could think of a couple of mentors they've ever come across and just send a little thank you note, oh my God, that will just make their day.
Absolutely would.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you for having me.
That was amazing. Thank you. And I hope our listeners love this chat. And stay tuned for the next ones to come. They will be amazing. And we'll see you soon.
Anytime, anywhere, as they say. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye. Good day, everyone. This is for the podcast. I'm going to do it. Good day, everyone. This is an interview with,